Welcome to Business Mastery with Dawn Kennedy, your quick under 45-minute dose of expert insights and strategies to make a positive impact on your business and life. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the Business Mastery Podcast. We're continuing on topics that affect your business and your ability to lead your most effective way as CEO. And today, we are covering a topic that we've never covered before, but I think it's very interesting, and I think that it can give you really good insights into yourself. So we're going to talk about human design. And if you're not familiar, I have Mel on here. She's an expert, and we're going to start from the basics. So Mel, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Dawn. I'm so excited to initiate this conversation.
Yeah.
Topic.
Human design has been around for a long time. I think it was like over a long time ago, but I hadn't heard about it till probably 2 years ago. So let's first talk about what is human design.
Yeah, so human design is a tool that has been created by combining Kabbalah, I Ching or I Ching, astrology, your chakras, and quantum physics. And what it does is it shows you your energetic blueprint. So I love to tell people it's almost like your personalized operations manual. It shows you how you process your information, where you receive your information, your energy levels, as well as just where are the best places and how are the best practices for you to decide what you want to do. And also give you validation. Words are hard this morning. Validation about the why behind your how. So often, especially for those of us who are entrepreneurs, get so overwhelmed by everything that we think we need to do. And we are taught very well to seek outside information, right? Seek the mentors who've done it before, seek the funnels, seek the experts. And though that's not wrong, what it also is doing is it's stopping us from going to ourselves first. What do we know to be true? How is it that we want to create what we want? And then find the resource or the mentor that matches that. But a lot of times we don't take the time to do that. We just seek first, ask questions later, and we can tend to run into a lot of overwhelm with that. And what human design does is it gives you that validation, confirmation, and awareness of who you are and why and how you are designed to create what you want. So that you can really seek out the quote unquote correct resources and support to help you do that so you can be profitable mentally, emotionally, and financially every day.
Amazing. So I do want to say that the basis of this Kabbalah I Ching, some people may not have heard of that, but the quantum mechanics and the quantum physics piece of this is something that we talked about like 2 years ago on the science of intuition, right? And about how we get down to that sort of cellular level. So we have that piece of it when it came to intuition. So now we're going to kind of wrap these other things around it. And I really want to encourage people to have an open mind. And in full disclosure, I did my own chart 2 years ago, and I did learn a lot about myself, although I did not get into kind of all the nitty gritties. It just...
there's a lot of pieces.
It was just a very high level aha. And it helped me kind of explain why I do better certain times of the day than others, or it gave me permission to say, you know, there are ways that I could go about these things that would just make it more successful with each interaction. So I just want to throw that out there. So
it gives... Sorry, go ahead.
No, let's dive into, you know, first of all, what are the human design types and how can you find your own?
Sure. So there's a lot of amazing free sites that you can go to receive the basics of your human design information for free. And all you'll need to have is your birth date, your birth time, and your birth location. And usually what those do just give you the generalized information, but it's good information to start with because I like to say that human design is the ultimate onion of personal development. There are a ton of layers, and if you feel called to look at your chart, you're going to see circles and lines and colors and numbers and all these things. And I want to encourage you to not get overwhelmed, but to start with what you already mentioned was your types. So inside of human design are 5 different types, and these are the overarching energetic themes for an individual. Each person, nobody has the same chart. though there are only 5 types, the rest of the information that is in your chart is what defines you and differentiates you from every other person inside of that type. So I always like to throw a word of caution out there that when you do start with your type, know that that is a general theme and it is not the end all be all. It tells you your energetic starting points, stopping points, as well as your individual strategy, and how you utilize that and bring that to life is customized by the other areas of your chart. So with that said, there are 5, as we mentioned, 5 types. So the first is called a generator. A generator is 70% of the population, and a lot of people like to coin them as the worker bees. I like to coin them as the backbone. They are what helped us survive as a human species. They have created the structure and the formulas that we have now in order to have evolved as much as we have. They have copious amounts of energy. And the interesting thing about generators is that though they have a ton of energy, they're not meant to be initiators. And that right there for an entrepreneur is like, I'm sorry, what now? Because we're taught, right, to initiate, to go for it, to just do it. And honestly, only 7% of the population is meant to initiate. The rest of us have an element of weight in our design. So for generators to have that much energy, in order to ensure that they are putting it into the places that are the most profitable for them, mentally, emotionally, and financially, is to utilize their strategy, wait to respond. So that already in itself can have some people, arching their eyebrows a little bit of, what do you mean wait? It's like, what if something happens? And again, a lot of those questions can be answered inside of your individual chart. But what I really love about human design is that it resets our pace within our lives and within our businesses and helps create a sustainable, quote unquote, success, as opposed to just do it, go to these goals here. It gives us that permission to pause, to really evaluate the information that we're receiving and to know how to process that information to make the best decisions for ourselves.
Right. Let me interrupt for a second because when we're saying not initiate, I want to make sure it's very clear because I stumbled with this at first when I saw this because I'm a generator. It was not the idea that good ideas don't come to you. It's not the idea you're not the creator and things like that. It literally has to do with how you manage the information coming in.
Yes.
And whether or not you should take first step actions in solving certain things. So I want to make that very, very clear to the audience because I struggle with that for a year where it's like, but I get great ideas. I get these downloads. I get these creative things when we're problem solving. And, I do quote unquote initiate those sort of like creative things. I'll put things together, but I have learned to leverage other human design types to maybe take things into places that I haven't and go ahead and seek some information so I can then make a decision.
Yeah, and thank you so much for expanding on that, especially being a generator, because it's so true. And that's why I always caution when you hear the definitions behind these types, human design wasn't meant to be taken verbatim. It's guidelines, right? It's so that initiation. You like little things in your life. Yes, if you see the dishes need to get done, you can initiate, go do the dishes. It's not about you have to sit there and wait for permission for every single thing in your life. It is waiting to ensure that you have what you need in order to be sustainable and to be successful, instead of taking the idea and just going, okay, I want to do this. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to start this. I'm going to go here. And you start putting all these action steps into play before you take a moment and get to know yourself. Go, okay, I'm getting this idea. Where does this fit inside of what do I want? Do I already have people who can support me? If not, what are the actual questions and places I want to be in to make this possible? And call in those resources and take time in really ensuring that that is really where you want to be. I always tell my generators and their subcontact, which is a manifesting generator, I always say, just because you can doesn't mean you always should. So it's that aspect of, yes, I have the energy and.
Hi. And I do want to point out that I've seen this with big projects and big ideas and big things that come into mind, that if you don't stop and pause and you start to put all these things in, you will literally exhaust yourself and overwhelm yourself.
Absolutely.
So that was an insight to me when, we get good ideas. I now don't try to make all the decisions. I try to get more information. And, again, you're right. And I think what happens sometimes is when you get your chart, if you're interested in it, a lot of times things will start to come out first and be maybe seen as negative, right? So instead of it being deep insight, it's like, but it's always worked for me like that before, but it's always worked but the fact that it may have worked before doesn't mean that the ultimate results couldn't be better by understanding this about yourself.
Exactly. And just because you can doesn't mean you always should, and doesn't mean you always can. This is about sustainability. Being an entrepreneur is hard enough, and it takes a lot of our, mental and emotional capacity to be able to continue to find our drive, our passion side of this. And that's what human design is showing you, is how to sustainably be profitable mentally, emotionally, and financially throughout this entire journey, no matter what transition or hallway you're in or what plot twist you're currently in. It gives you that information to utilize that space in the most profitable way. And it is because when I read my human design, I'm what's called a projector. So we're kind of skipping around, but I love this in the essence of just like the rank of the types. So I'm what's called a projector, and we are about 10 to 15% of the population. We have very low amounts of energy, 2 to 4 tops, and that means focused energy because we don't receive it from ourselves like manifesting generators and generators do. We receive it from others. And that comes with its own interesting stopping point, because I found for myself, when I was around others, I had copious amounts of energy. So I was overbooking myself. I was having, a gazillion virtual coffees and meetings a day because I was like, no, as soon as I go to the next person, I get more energy. And then as soon as I log off, I would be a complete puddle and just not be able to function, honestly, in my real life. But I didn't know where that came from. I just chalked it up to, I'm an introverted extrovert. It's fine. But really, it's because that's how I'm designed. And when I understood that, though I can, doesn't mean that I should. I can get energy from others and go, 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 go. But that does bite me in the ass. And so what can I do to maintain that sustainability? So I have limited the amount of meetings that I have each day. And I make sure that I have a little bit of transition time in between. And though that may be a quote unquote slower pace to, the outside world, it is a pace that is going to help me be sustainable. And so it's really interesting when you see those differences, even in just how and when we receive our energy, how that can help you create a little bit more of a structure boundary, as well as really look at what resources can you use to do what you still want to do, but not take away so much energy.
Okay, so I'm going to disclose again, if you're on the podcast and you're hearing this. So I actually went back, and just because I was so fascinated when I started kind of looking at some of this, again, for the idea of myself, I pulled my kids' birth charts, right? Because I knew when they were born, I was there. And I found out that 2 of the 5 were actually projectors. And, I'm now a lot older. My kids are grown. They're wonderful. But had I had even just a tiny bit of insight, the fact that maybe their starting place for energy, or maybe they couldn't do as much as their siblings as far as like focus for a long time, maybe we shouldn't have done, because I have generators and I have a manifestor too. It's kind of crazy. But when I sat back and I really was very open-minded and looked back and I said, yeah, they did have like real differences.
Yeah.
And, what they would do, how they would start, how long they would work on a project, and what these things were. And I'm not saying that I would have necessarily, quote unquote, raised them differently, because that's, it's not favoritism by human design. It was, I wonder if
it's that awareness.
Right. It's like maybe I would have given this one a little bit of a longer deadline because they like to sprint at the end, or maybe And so instead of trying to corral everybody into, the idea that you listen to your children individually back when I was raising my children was, well, you don't ever say something like, you need to be more like your brother or your sister or whatever. You need to like what everybody else likes. And I have 5 insanely individualistic kids. Absolutely love all. Absolute total individuals, fascinated by different things, different talents, different stuff. But understanding that I have a projector and they need a little bit of a longer runway, that they're not going to necessarily be able to do things in the same time frame or the same way, would have been helpful, I think, in some of those teenage fights where it's like, why does it need to be done now? And again, as a parent and also an entrepreneur, this stuff, just the insights into that, if you're really open-minded and honest and looking at it, can really also help you navigate, different relationships as well.
Absolutely.
Especially with my kids. I was like, okay, now I understand why this one didn't, the pushback. Why do I have to do it today? Why do I have to do it now? And I didn't always have a good reason, except I, as a generator, needed it done.
Right.
Interesting. Had I given an extra 48-hour deadline or broken it into smaller pieces or did it, the result at the end of the day, again, would have probably been better.
Yeah.
And that understanding probably would have, stopped some teenage fights. So I'm just going to throw that out there because you're a projector.
Yeah.
There's 3 more types we probably need to talk about.
Yeah. So I've mentioned manifesting generator already a couple times, and that's actually a subcategory or a hybrid of a pure manifester and a pure generator. And a manifesting generators are, so as I mentioned earlier, generators are 70% of the population. Half of all generators are actually manifesting generators. So 35% of that 70 are manifesting generators. And again, staying along the copious amount of energy line, where the manifesting generator is different is the manifesting generator is my multitasker who can do it really well. These are the people that when a business coach or mentor says to niche down, they want to throw up. They are the ones that are multi-passionate, multi-inspired, and just look like they can just do everything and be really successful at it. And I always love working with manifesting generators because they get stuck between that pure generator structure side and that really beautiful, magical manifester. Because a pure manifester, which is about 5% of the population, is the initiator. So those are our initiators. Those are the magicians. Those are the ones that have all these beautiful ideas. They talk about them, they energize and inspire people, and then those people take the idea and make it beautiful. And the manifester moves on to the next thing. So combining that pure manifester with a pure generator, that's how you get a mani-gen. So you have this really beautiful juxtaposition of structure and flow. And I love working with manifesting generators to understand what their flow is, because not all manifesting generators are programmed the same. So what bits of the generator really get you going? What bits of the manifester really get you going? And how can we ensure that both pieces are being respected and blended in a sustainable, profitable way? So their strategy is to inform again, with having that kind of wait to respond aspect to it due to the generator. So having kind of that dualistic strategy as well, it's like, okay, so I have all these ideas. Manifesting generators, I always say they can see and then they can see, right? They see 5 million steps and then they have the energy to like, I'm going to go do it. But what they need to do is make sure that they tell people what they're thinking. What are they doing? Not from I need people's permission standpoint, but more of just a, hey, let us in on your beautiful brain, because the other types and the other support around you can help you make sure as a manifesting generator that you haven't skipped any steps, that you haven't just gone straight for the good stuff, that you have really taken the time to see, again, what you already have accomplished, what resources you already have available. So you're not reinventing the wheel because you didn't take the time to see what shape your wheel is already in. So that's a manifesting generator. We already talked about projector, which is myself and your awesome kiddo. Again, we have slower amounts of energy, 2 to 4 hours max. Our strategy is called wait to be invited. So our passion and our strength comes from, and sustainability comes from sharing, comes from being guides. I like to say we're big observers. We like to see the patterns, see what goes on. We're really great listeners. A lot of us are in the coaching space and in the creative space as well, or consulting space. And then last but not least is Reflector. A reflector is 1% of the population. I actually just had the honor of working with one for the last couple of weeks, which was really cool because they have a completely different subset than all of us inside of the rest of the charts. They're what I like to call the barometer of the collective. They are completely open. They have no set definitions inside of their chart. And they are here to be the ultimate guides. They are here to make really grounded decisions and to help ensure that we are all staying healthy and happy and secure. And their strategy is actually wait 28 days. So I keep saying there's waiting in all elements except for the manifester. The manifester just gets to inform and initiate and go. The rest of us do have that essence of waiting inside of our design. And so again, even with just that little bit of awareness of, not all of us are meant to, just because we can, we should, there is that element of pausing. How does that already start to reframe your focus and your training and tenacity when it comes to creating what you want?
Yeah, amazing. All right. So just to kind of recap, we've got the generator, the manifesting generator, the manifester, the projector, and then the reflector, right? So
correct. Yep.
Those are kind of just the 5 types. Now, I kind of want to take a look and just kind of put this out there as well. This is really about sort of the energetics and the way that your energy is, in you, even biologically. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because let's talk a little about how this changes from what I would call the personality types. Like there are so many, 16 personality and the discs and things. And a lot of human resources, companies wide, they use this type of personality things to see if someone's going to be a good fit or culture. And there has been some stuff, around those things as being decision-making tools rather than guiding tools. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about how this is different from those personality tests and, why we should maybe look at these, for ourselves, but maybe not use them to judge other people.
Yeah. And thank you for saying that. So I always like to equate a lot of those personality tests as the tip of the iceberg, right? We've seen pictures of an iceberg where the top is I think they say at the top of the iceberg is typically 2 to 5% of an entire iceberg because you have everything underneath. So all of those Enneagram, DISC, SWOT, I think there's so many out there. Myers-Briggs, those are at the top of the iceberg. Those are the overarching themes, and a lot of them can actually be due to conditioning, training, and trauma. Where human design is underneath the iceberg. It's the why behind your how. And it's your baseline. I like to say it's your foundation. And a lot of us don't even know where our baseline is because we have been copying and pasting for so long, or we have been just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And I'm speaking for myself personally, is we get caught up in those titles, those milestones, those guidelines. And we don't take the time to go, well, wait. What does this actually mean to me? Why do I want to do this? Or why do I not want to be on social media? Why does this way that they're saying things, why doesn't it work for me? I think a lot of us have been inside of, either with one-on-one coaching or with group coaching, where we have those moments of why isn't this working for me? What is wrong with me? And human design doesn't show you what's wrong with you. It shows what's wrong with the advice that you were given and how to take that advice and actually be able to customize it to you. So to go back to how you would have talked to your kids, I love being able to work with business partners because even in those relationships, how are they able to communicate with each other, understanding their types? Because it's more than just, are you a leader? Are you a follower? Are you a task? Those kind of more generalized terms. It's that deeper understanding of, oh, I know that they are an emotional authority. So if they're excited, they need to wait. If they're stressed, they should wait. Or I know that they make their decisions from their sacral, which means that they are more intuitional and things of that nature. So again, it just gives you that like, oh, that's why. And that's actually the light bulbs that I hear or see a lot during my readings. It's not about looking back and going, okay, that doesn't make any sense. It's more of those, oh, I'm not crazy. I'm not okay. That's why this did this, or that's why I feel this. Now with that, human design can also give you the information of how to utilize it profitably or reframe it because you've actually been using it from the wrong side of the coin, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And this kind of harkens back, right, that biological construct of things. This also brings me back. I heard something, and there is a book, a sleep book or a study that came out about a percentage of the population that really are biologically second shifters, right? And there is a percentage of the population that is biologically that third shift.
Yeah.
Were absolute physical adaptations, and it had to do with humanity while we were coming up in the world, that there was a percentage of the population that were the night guardsmen, and they had their energy.
I just read that too. That's
okay.
funny.
You read it. Okay.
Yeah, I just read that.
Right.
And it makes so much sense because we try to punish ourselves. I have an amazing client who is that night owl. She gets all of her good ideas from like 9 p.m. till 3 in the morning. And she used to punish herself because she was like, I need to be an early morning person because, early morning people are the successful ones. I'm like, no. Your success is in that magic time. So how can you rearrange your office hours so you do get enough sleep and can take care of you and still be accessible to the people that you want to be accessible to? It's that, again, that permission. And we've said that word a couple of times already in this episode. It's that permission from yourself of going, okay, no, this is right because this is me. So how can I stop punishing myself for not being like, quote unquote, everybody else? And how can I customize my business? That's the joy of being an entrepreneur. We have full say on how we spend the time that we have and how we build the business that we want. Everybody else are resources, guidelines, supports, beautiful. But it is yours and yours alone to create. And you have already full permission. So continuing to embrace that permission of, no, I know what I want. I know where I want to be. I know where I don't want to be. So how can I just stay in tune with that and trust that that is the way that I'm going to create the business, the money, and the life that I want?
Yeah, I love this. I mean, I want to call out, and I won't name names, but if successful restaurant that I know where they did ask this question and they actually switched shifts, right? Their openers were their morning people who were excited to be there. And the closers were the people that were like, no, I like to work at 8 or 7 or whatever.
Yeah.
It was very interesting because not only did everybody embrace working there more and saying how much more they liked it, there was less sort of like shift changes, if that makes sense. Like people would not call out on shift as much, and people would not try to swap shifts all the time. Like, this was a question. It wasn't a question of we need to hire for second shift or we need to hire, for close or whatever. And I wish maybe some other businesses would look at this. I have started kind of looking at that in our business about, if we go to an event, who actually should be doing the open hours and who should
love that. Because it's those little things. Like my favorite quote is from Brendan Bouchard that I say all the time. And he said, it's the little things you do every day that make the biggest difference.
Yeah.
And we aren't necessarily taught that, right? We're taught to just like, especially from an entrepreneurial standpoint, like what can you do to get to those 10K months? What can you do to create this, that, and the other? It's like, you will get there. I promise you. But if you're trying to pigeonhole yourself into something because of a promise from somebody else without even knowing yourself first, that just seems like a big mess. It's really understanding like, okay, I see this. I see that people have accomplished this. I know I can do this. So what is my path? What is my way to do this? Like Frank Sinatra, doing it my way,
Right.
It's that same aspect of your success is not going to be like everybody else's. So why is your structure?
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let's wrap this, like bring this back to human design. So I kind of also that, again, the audience is being open-minded. And we've talked about how this is different from those personality tests and stuff. And those things are really heavily used in a lot of cases.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's like, let's open our mind. Let's go one level deep, but let's go back to human design. So besides your type, which again is the date of your birth, the time of your birth, and the location, let's talk about things like a little more next level, like gates and things like that. And what does that mean? So if you're interested and you go get your chart, you're going to see a bunch of stuff on that chart, right? Right. So there are things like energy centers and gates and stuff. Can you break down like what else we would see if we just went and got our chart?
Yeah. So from just, I would say this again, because it's the ultimate onion, right? And I never want to overwhelm people with information. So I always tell individuals when they receive their chart to start with their strategy, or I'm sorry, their type and their strategy and their authority. So you'll see that as it'll either say emotional or sacral or splenic. And what that means is that's where your decision center is. By the by, it's never our head. Nobody makes decisions from their head. And very few of us actually make decisions with our hearts or our guts. And again, it's those little things of like, ooh, if I know that I'm an emotional authority, which again means I need to ride that emotional wave, whether it's high or low, and wait until that has, subsided before I get a little bit more clarification. When people tell me if it's a full body hell yes, it's a hell yes. No. For me as an emotional, a full body hell yes is a great indicator that I'm on the right path. I still need to sleep on it and ask more questions. When people say trust your gut, not everybody should trust their gut because we're not all defined in our sacral, which is our deep intuition. So again, it's those one-liners that we hear so often that we try to put into play and try to figure out why that's not for us. And that is because it's not in alignment with what's your authority for yourself. The next level after that is your centers, which are the bigger kind of either white spaces or colored spaces when you look at your chart. And those are in alignment with different chakras. And those are your receiving and your reaction points. So the ones that are white or have no color in them, that's where you receive your information. So for those of you who are like, I have a ton of ideas all the time, that probably means that your head or your crown is open because that's where you receive a lot of ideas. And how you utilize those is you move them towards the colored centers because those have a set filtering system. Those have a set process or a definition. And so that helps you filter what information, emotion, ideas are meant for you, as well as, again, utilizing that strategy to give you that pausing point and that filtering section. So you aren't always feeling like you're scrambling. You aren't always feeling like you are a gazillion places at once. Even for my Manny-gens who can be in a million places at once, utilizing their strategy slows them down just enough to where, again, it's sustainable, not frantic. So I would start looking at, there's also gates, which are the numbers inside of each center that those have different themes and how you utilize energy. Again, so much information. But I would, for those of you who just want to do the free chart that just gets the basic information, look at your type, your strategy, and your authority. And with that information alone, start seeing what small shifts you can make, whether that is starting differently or pulling back sooner. And then from there, see what calls to you next inside of your chart. Is it your centers? Is it what's called your profile, which are the numbers you see a lot with people like, I'm a line 6, I'm a line 2. Those are the main characteristics inside of who you are as your type. So again, it's layer upon layer upon layer. In fact, the person who brought human design forward says it takes an average of 7 years for you to fully, naturally utilize and incorporate your design. And I love that because it gives us that slower pace already, just like, oh no, this can grow with me. There's no pressure to start implementing everything because you can't. It's taking what information stood out to you and, oh, there it is. And how can you shift? And then what's the next piece of information, and so on and so forth as you go deeper into, that bottom of the iceberg.
So I'm going to say you said something pretty radical about the idea of somebody who makes, emotional decisions, or they make, decisions based on how they feel and those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. And, that I think there's a lot of us, especially when we first start out and we maybe haven't honed into necessarily intuition. And even when you get an intuitive hit anymore, I wait 24 to 48 hours, right? That's just me based on my track record of crazy decisions that didn't work because I didn't stop long enough, right? But you said something radical, because a lot of people they'll sit here and they'll say, yeah, but I just, I feel really good about this. And they maybe didn't take time to understand where their authority is or decision center. And sometimes they do get good results and sometimes they don't get good results. So let's just talk a little bit about those centers. Are there times where you are getting some other information that could potentially override and say, this is a good decision, I don't need to wait? Or generally speaking, when we're looking at our design, do we put things in place that would kind of put those brakes on? And since a lot of the information doesn't necessarily, as you said, come from the head, and you take the time to dig into things like the numbers and stuff. So we're not saying that if you get excited about something, you shouldn't do it, or if you don't get excited, right?
Right.
So let's just be really super clear on that. But I can tell, just again, full disclosure, times when I have been so excited about certain things are often, if I don't stop and really think and look and investigate, I may make a pretty awful decision. And you can come back from those. So that's the other thing. There's no judgment in your decision.
No, it's
about
learning.
Right. Right. Okay. So let's just, make sure that we're very, very clear about kind of emotional authority or some of these things. And are there times though where, you just kind of know, and even though it doesn't quote unquote align, because we're not doing human design to put people in a box.
No. That's actually the opposite. Human design is the science of differentiation. It is showing you your own box that you have, that you have been born with, that you can design and create any way that you see fit. And it's showing you how to do that sustainably and beautifully and holistically. So no, this isn't about roping in. And that's why it's so interesting, because people are like, well, I'm the generator, so I know this about generators, so I'm just going to stick to this. Like, well, yes, and you're a generator, but you also have all of these other elements in your chart that nobody else's generator has. So you will never meet the same generator. You'll never meet the same manifesting generator. You'll never meet the same projector. You'll see certain nuances and elements because we'll have some things that will be cohesive with each other. But who we are inside of that completely differs. And when you know your authority, so example for me as a projector, I am extremely open. A lot of my centers are receivers, which means I get a ton of ideas. I see the patterns. I get the emotions, all of the things. And as I mentioned earlier, it's easy for me to get caught up in that. And so understanding that I'm an emotional authority, it's that trust of like, ooh, I'm excited. That means there's something here. And if I know, even sleeping on it, again, just gives me that time for my brain to process everything else and for any other questions to come forward. I can sleep on it for 24 hours and I will just either know what the next question is or, yep, this is definitely a correct full body. Hell yes.
Yeah.
Right? So it gives us more of a way to process those decisions before we make them. The ones who are more instantly intuitive, so those would be the splenic and the sacral, they say yes. But then there's that element of you're saying yes to what you know now, which means your sacral and your spleen, or your spleen, depending on which one your authority is going to constantly be pinging you, which means you're going to be constantly receiving new information, which means you're going to be constantly making new decisions. So there's that forgiveness for yourself as well. Like, well, I said yes to this. Why doesn't it feel right? Well, because you got new information. And now your spleen is like, just kidding. Or your spleen is like, yep, let's keep going. Right. So again, it helps us really love and honor the way that we are built, because we know we are built that way. And because we have that understanding, it's less about punishing ourselves and trying to put ourselves in the box. It's really embracing the box that we have, that we are creating, that is meant for us and for us alone.
I love that. So I got so excited about diving into this topic because, again, we've never covered it before. I've had some awareness over a couple of years. I never asked you who you are, who you serve, and tell me how people can contact you to get more. And we're going to put the links down. If you are at all interested in those show notes, we're going to put those links in so you can go take a look. But I want people to know who you are, who you serve, and then how can they reach out to you because you have more information.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, my name is Mel McSherry, and I help inspired yet overwhelmed entrepreneurs honor their lives and be the architect of their success by utilizing human design in partnership and collaboration with traditional business development tools and frameworks. So every day they are profitable mentally, emotionally, and financially. And how you can get into contact with me, you can respectfully stalk me on LinkedIn. You connect with me, Mel McSherry. I'm also on Instagram, Mel_McSherry. Feel free to check out my website, melmcsherry.com. Or if you want to pick my brain, which I know a lot of people are like, you're letting people pick your brain. I love having complimentary virtual coffees. They're 30 minutes long, completely safe, open space, no sales, no pressure, no nothing. If you would like to spend a little bit more one-on-one time with me, feel free to schedule that at virtualcoffeewithmel.com.
I love this. Okay, so again, we're going to put down in the show notes the link where you can get your human design chart. It is free, and then all of Mel's information, so you can reach out to learn more. There's so much information out there.
Yeah.
And it can be overwhelming. So I love that you gave everybody kind of those little bitty steps of like, this is what we should do first, second, third, fourth. And because you could, like you said, you could dive into this for forever, but
yeah. You can go down rabbit hole on rabbit hole.
it is a fascinating thing. And I can tell you that when I first, got my chart and stuff, I was like, yeah, okay, so this is going to be like DISC, or this is going to be like 16 personalities, whatever. But it was just so overwhelming at one point when I realized that nobody else in the universe was born where I was at that minute in time on that date. And it just kind of blew me away that I was designed and given purpose. And that's the other thing I want to encourage everyone to look at is what I found so profound about this is, even twins, I learned twins have two different charts, or they could. Even, if they're born 3 minutes apart, they'll have different design. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
There's a lot of science on this too, but maybe we should do that in another. We can do that in another. So, Mel, thank you so much for coming in here and really being so amazing about breaking this down, because it can be overwhelming when you first hear about it, especially because there are just so many other tools out there, and this one is not really well discussed yet.
Yeah, and thank you so much for allowing me to have the space to share it, because it is such a powerful tool for an individual as well as the collective. And I'm so excited that more and more people are curious about it. And again, I'm happy if there's anything, that yourself or any of your listeners ever need any support on or any clarification on, I'm always just a message away.
Fantastic. All right. I'll talk to y'all next time on the next episode of the Business Mastery Podcast. Take care. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Business Mastery Podcast. If you want to learn more about me, you can go to dawnkennedy.com, and you can now check us out on YouTube, as well as, of course, any of your favorite platforms that host podcasts. Take care.